The weekly Cybercrime and Business podcast is brought to you by SurfWatch Labs. SurfWatch Labs delivers cyber risk intelligence solutions that help organizations understand the potential for cyber attacks, determine the impact to their business, and proactively address threats head-on. Everybody out there, today is May 15th, 2015. I am Jeff Peters, HackSurfer editor. I'm here with Matt Leifus, HackSurfer writer, and Eric Severson, SurfWatch Labs data analyst. Coming up after the discussion, we have an interview with Brian Foster. He's the CTO of Damballa. A few podcasts ago, I think it was right before RSA, we talked about their study where they said you're more likely to get struck by lightning than have mobile malware communicating out of your device. So we thought it'd be interesting to bring him on and actually talk about the mobile malware threat and some of the research that their company did. But yeah, jump right into it. Throw it over to you, Matt, for the top cyber headlines from SurfWatch Labs data.
Sure. The top trending new target for the week was FireKeepers Casino Hotel. The company released a statement late last week saying that they were investigating a breach of their point-of-sale software. At this time, there's no further information about the breach or the findings in the investigation. However, the company did say that they have installed new point-of-sale equipment to help ensure customers that their information will be protected.
It's important to note, I think, last week we had another hotel casino, and then recently we've seen White Lodging and a couple other hotels. It seems as the summer travel season gets going, this might be a common target to see people attacking point-of-sale systems. So anyone on travel for work or for yourself, watch the credit cards after.
Yeah, I'm sure if we see any more of that, it'll definitely pop up in some of the new trending targets for the week. We'll probably talk about it in a future podcast, no doubt. Coming at number 2, we had the Mat Hassan Memorial, and I might have mispronounced that, guys. Sorry about that. The website for the memorial was hacked this week. Unidentified hackers decided it would be a real fun idea to put several child pornography images on the web page. Just to give a little background information, this memorial was a concentration camp in Austria where Nazi soldiers killed more than 100,000 people. The camp was liberated by U.S. troops in May of 1945, so if you do the math, this month marks the 70th anniversary. And this past Sunday, commemorations were held for that 70th anniversary of the liberation. And the third trending target this week was the Swedish resistance movement. This is a little, if you're going to back hacking websites and hacktivism, I guess is a little better purpose. Members of Anonymous Sweden took down 2 Nazi-supporting websites with a DDoS attack. The websites were hosted in Sweden. Anonymous Sweden announced the attack via Pastebin, where they pointed out that it had been 70 years since Nazi Germany fell, but that the Nazi movement was still alive and well in Europe. The group also said that they will wipe out all the Nazis from the web. Those are the 3 top new trending targets for the week.
Yeah, it seems like all these hacker groups are always trying to overstate everything. You know, they're trying to wipe Israel off the map, wipe Nazis off the web. I mean, I think that's pretty much impossible to do, but good luck to them.
Especially with like a single DDoS attack that takes their website offline for at a day tops, you know.
Yeah, moving beyond some of the attacks this week, I think one of the big headlines was this Venom Vulnerability. CloudStrike on Wednesday, they released some research. They found a critical vulnerability in the code used by many computer virtualization platforms. And everyone's really been talking about this, sort of been the big story of the past couple days. The bug is known to affect the Xen, KVM, and native QEMU virtualization platforms and appliances. And what it does is it makes it possible for the attackers to break out of the protected YEST environments and take full control of the operating system. CrowdStrike's Jason Geffner, he's the one who, the researcher who found the bug. He said that millions of virtual machines are using one of these vulnerable platforms. And there's been a little bit of a back and forth. I think there's been a lot of criticism just in the way that the Venom bug was announced, kind of much like Heartbleed and some of these other SSL vulnerabilities from the past year. They were really announced with, a website and a logo and all this fanfare. So I think a lot of people are criticizing this Venom bug for that way. But it is, still relatively serious. Rob Graham, he's the CEO of security firm Errata. He described this bug. He said it's a perfect bug for the NSA. Things like Bitcoin wallets, RSA private keys, forum passwords, and the like are easily found by searching raw memory. So with this vulnerability, it would be possible that, say, that the NSA could spend $100,000, buy a ton of $10 VPS instances and run the search and get all sorts of passwords and things like that. So it sounds like a fairly serious vulnerability, although I don't know if it quite lives up to the Heartbleed comparison.
Yeah, to, I guess, kind of take it down a notch, it doesn't affect some of the most popular virtualization programs. VMware, Microsoft HyperV, these are some of the most popular out there, and they're totally fine. But as for the other ones, it's really just, if you have a cloud provider, you call them and make sure they've applied this patch to their virtualization servers, and they probably have. They had a few weeks to take care of it, and then it's done. Like, it's not getting, I don't think it's worth getting too worked up about. It's worth fixing, worth talking about, but it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, so Venom's kind of been the big story the last couple days. I guess one story that I found maybe not funny, but kind of amusing is Jamie Oliver popped back up in our data. I saw that you wrote an article on HackSurfer about that, Matt. I believe it was third time just this year that his website's shown up?
Yep, it's the third time in 2015. It looks like, same attack. There's actually evidence that all three attacks really stem from the very first one. As a matter of fact, Jerome Segura of Malwarebytes, after the second attack, said that he had his doubts about the website being free and clear of the malware from the first attack. And he also went on to say that it's quite common for hacked servers to retain parts of the infection and that it can still be used by hackers in the future. So there's evidence suggesting that all three of these attacks are really, stem from the very first time, and that the malware and all the infection just was not completely erased.
They're not the only ones. We've seen this sort of happen a couple times lately. The company or a site that was breached is seeing a repeat hack. The big one this week, I guess, is Sally Beauty Holdings. About this time last year, they had a point-of-sale credit card breach, and now they've got another one. It was 25,000 cards last time, and they haven't given a number for this time, but they just confirmed that it is the case. Just last month, we saw White Lodging that runs some hotels. They showed up in 2014, so you might think, oh, they got attacked, they fixed everything, now it's fine, but these kinds of attacks could make them a target for other groups, or it might be that they haven't wiped out all of the vulnerabilities, and so one attack might lead to another. If anyone's been breached, be on the lookout for other attacks trying to exploit those same problems.
Yeah, there was another interesting story this week. I don't know if you guys have been following this whole Traversa LabMD story, but earlier this week, Richard Wallace, he's a former investigator with cybersecurity company Traversa. He testified in federal court that the company was routinely engaging in fraud. CNN Money used the term mafia-style shakedowns, but basically they tried to scare potential clients. Traversa would typically make up a fake data breach and then pressure the firms to pay up. And so what they did, according to Richard Wallace at least, is in order to make the breaches look legit, Traversa's investigators would download sensitive files, move them to the company's servers, and alter information to make it appear as though the files had been accessed or stored by a variety of IP addresses. So they would make it look like, known or suspected identity thieves had downloaded some files or stolen some files. So this story's really been going on for a long time. This connection to LabMD actually goes all the way back to 2008. Traversa allegedly contacted LabMD back in 2008, claiming that it had a 1,178-page file with sensitive information from a peer-to-peer network, and that it saw others downloading the file, which I believe contained like patient information or something from LabMD. LabMD turned down Traversa's offer to help, and after that, Traversa gave the file to the FTC, and the allegation is that the data in there was bogus, but what happened was LabMD got in trouble. They got caught in this prolonged legal battle that's been going on for years, And in 2014, LabMD was effectively forced out of business. Now it operates as an insolvent entity that simply provides records to former patients, LabMD said. So it's kind of a crazy ongoing story that's been going on for years. And we hear so much about this FUD in the cybersecurity industry. As we were just talking about with Venom, people sort of overstating sometimes what things are. And here we have an actual case, an actual lawsuit going on where people, we might have proof that maybe one company, Traversa, at least might have engaged in this type of activity.
I wonder where it's more difficult, like faking a data breach or actually breaching someone's network. I would be interested to see what's involved in doing that.
Yeah, and it's a pretty big company. These are some pretty serious claims. And they, of course, Traversa, refutes it, says it's not true. There's a bitter employee making up things because he's been fired. But it involves LabMD and the FTC case, which has been a really interesting court battle over the whole world of regulating cybercrime and breaches. So this is dramatic twist, I guess. This is cybersecurity soap opera right now.
Yeah, so moving on to our cyber tip of the week. This week Encapsula posted a blog post about a botnet comprised of thousands or tens of thousands of small office, home office routers. So I wrote an article about that earlier this week, and just doing a little research, I found this paper from Tripwire from, I think it was back in February. But they were just saying that there's a really high risk of these SOHO routers. So if you're a business and you have remote workers or employees that connect from home or anything like that, what Tripwire found was, I think it was 74% of Amazon's top 50 home office routers had vulnerabilities. And the important thing to note is that within the group of people that use these kind of routers, they said fewer than half said that their router firmware was up to date, and less than a third knew how to update their firmware. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're a business out there, to make sure that if you have employees using these kind of routers or working from home or connecting from outside the office, just to make sure that they know how to get their firmware and get those routers patched so they're not vulnerable, and just make sure that you're training them up on that. That's it for this week's discussion. Coming up, we have our interview with Brian Foster, the CTO of Damballa, on mobile malware. The big headlines making the rounds after you guys released your study was that you're 1.3 times more likely to get struck by lightning than have mobile malware communicated on your device. So I think that's a good place to start. It's a pretty catchy headline. Any thoughts on that?
So one of the interesting parts of Damballa, the company I work for, is we sit in ISPs and telcos and we help them find infected subscribers using some of the technology that we've developed. And kind of an artifact of that is we also have this visibility into their networks, and gives us the ability to see, how many infected subscribers are there. No surprise in some of the large landline subscribers, or landline ISPs, we find hundreds of thousands of infected, subscribers on a daily basis. Well, we also sit in 50% of mobile data traffic in North America we're looking at. And it's in that data that this report that one of my researchers had kind of come out with that, based on the data that we're looking at for this mobile data traffic over a couple of weeks in the fall of last year, we found just a very small number of mobile devices that were communicating out to true mobile malicious command and control or malicious sites. And when you look at it in totality of the total amount of traffic, it's just like you stated. According to the group that had come up with the estimate on your chance of getting struck by lightning, that those odds or that probability was higher than you actually having mobile malware on your device.
Yeah, no, when you guys found that number, did that surprise you? Because a lot of times you look at just the headlines on these various technology sites. I think just a couple days ago I saw one that said 1 in 5 Android apps is actually a malicious app. So when you look at all these headlines, it kind of paints the opposite picture. So were you surprised by the results?
Yeah, I wasn't surprised, partially because this was actually we were redoing some research that we actually did originally in 2012. And so when the research came out in 2012, that was when, for me, I was a little bit more startled that the numbers were so low. And then when we did the research again last year, it showed that nothing's really changed in terms of overall percentages, because back in 2012 when we first did this, it was low as well. But it does bring up some interesting conversation, because you do see a lot of security companies come out talking about how much mobile malware is out there and what a problem it is. And it's one of those things where and just my background, Jeff, I worked at Symantec, I worked at McAfee, so I've been involved and ran the teams that looked at, trying to monetize security on mobile devices. And obviously, there's an incentive there that if we can get people to behave similarly on their mobile devices than on their PCs, where they go get a subscription for security on their phone, that's obviously a good business for the kind of existing security establishment, if you will. So I think there's some motives behind the FUD behind mobile malware to make it a bigger deal than it is for these large companies to make money the way they used to. And so this report and this data comes out kind of in stark contrast to that and contradicts it. And there's a couple of caveats, there's a couple of ways to discuss it. One of them is, our data is based in the U.S. only. And the major supposition we make as far as why mobile malware isn't as distributed around on people's phones is because of the highly curated app stores through which you get all the applications that run on your Android or iOS device. Unless you jailbreak your phone, you can't get an app to run on your device unless it comes to those app stores. And Apple, and I think there's two main benefits to those app stores. The first is, Apple and Google, they do have security technologies that they run on apps automatically before they get added to the app stores. That's one of the benefits. And the other benefit is, as soon as an app is noticed as it's malicious, Apple and Google can flip a bit on their side and prevent it from running on anybody's device around the world. And so those app stores basically make it so that the threat actors who are trying to, most cases or a lot of cases, trying to build a monetary or a business around getting malware distributed on endpoints and having that malware do things for them, on mobile phones, they can't distribute it enough such that the economics of that makes sense. They can't get enough devices owned out there for their malware for them to profit. And the app stores are, I think, the main reason why. And so I say all of that because, when I look at the data, it's U.S. only. In U.S., we also have very highly curated, enforced app stores. You can go to parts of the world, though, like China, where Google and Apple don't have as enforced app stores, or at least the Android market isn't as enforced by Google, right? So you can see why and how there could be more examples of malware in China just because they're not the apps aren't as highly curated and controlled by Google. Anyways, I said a lot there. Let me pause and see what you think.
I was reading, the press release you guys put out, and I believe in there you said that the true extent of mobile risks is still not widely understood. So maybe now you guys are doing some research and you have a little more insight. I don't know if you have any specifics on what mobile risks are actually out there. Is it that the whole thing is kind of maybe overblown in some ways, or is there some specific things that we still should be really concerned about?
I think there are areas of concern, and I think one of the main points that I tell people as I explain this data is, one of the things the data shows is that, the issues of the past are not necessarily the issues of the future as we move to spending more of our computing time on a mobile device instead of in front of a computer or a PC. And by that I mean, on Windows particularly, any old app could be downloaded from the internet and ran, and you could, get an email, click a link, and that link could automatically take advantage of a vulnerability to get an app to download behind the scenes. That was kind of the operational model for a lot of malware on the PC that sparked and fed and fueled this criminal enterprise, if you will. That operation, the operational side of it, doesn't work the same way on a mobile device because of these app stores, right? So the problems of the past are not necessarily the problems of the future. However, that doesn't mean there's not different problems in the future that we need to think about and solve in different ways. And I think mobile devices do bring along different challenges, different risks. And a great example of this is, you're more likely to lose your phone than you are your PC. Leave it behind in a cab or whatever. And so, and you're doing more and more of your work, reading emails, reading documents, and maybe critical IP of your company on your mobile phone, right? So if you have a high risk of losing the device and it's got IP on it, well, then you got to also think about, well, how do I secure the data on this device so that in case I lose it, unintentionally, it can't show up somewhere and get someone to take advantage of it. So I still think that, there is a data protection element to your mobile device that I think is increased with mobile devices. I think that there's still, a lot of access through your phone to your personal life and to your data that's in the cloud. And so, if you think about back over the last year, I forget how long ago it was, but some people had guessed the passwords for some celebrities for their iCloud accounts. And because they were able to guess those passwords, they were able to go up and find pictures that they had taken that had uploaded to iCloud. And of course, it included some risque shots and other things of some of the celebrities that made its way out into the press. But that wasn't because of a vulnerability in the phone. It was because of weak passwords. But the important point is, and this is once again where you think about what are the security risks that are kind of new that you've got to think about with your phone, is your phone's becoming your passport to your digital cloud, to your online existence, right? How do you also protect that it is you who you say you are when you're accessing your cloud? And so it's not so much as there's a security problem on the phone that you want to solve on the phone, but there are security challenges to your digital life that you can solve on your phone. So, for example, what if the only way you can access your iCloud is through some type of human factor authentication, like your voice, your face, things like that? So there's also things that the phone or the mobile device enables you to do from a security perspective, even if it's not solving it. So all of that goes to say, as I sum it up kind of like I said earlier, the security problems and challenges and risks are different on a phone, and you have to think about those risks and think about how you solve them and so forth.
Yeah, well, I guess, sort of given that scenario you kind of painted, just wondering if you have any thoughts on if, businesses are kind of on the right track or the wrong track, because we hear a lot about, especially the last couple of years, about bring your own devices and device security and that kind of stuff. Just kind of any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do think so. I mean, I run more and more businesses that have already a mobile device management solution, which I think we're kind of one of the first generations, if you will, of how do I control these devices that access my enterprise information. You're seeing kind of the next generation of technologies to solve that problem be a little bit more around wrapping your specific enterprise applications with security so that you don't have to. Because a lot of these MDMs, some of these MDMs are like sandboxes in a way that you ran applications on the phone, and you lost some of the user experience of your phone when you did so. So, for example, you had to replace your Google Calendar, your Apple Calendar with one that came in this app, for example. It wouldn't be, as useful, what have you. You're seeing that technology continue to change to wrap the on the phone applications so that any data that comes from the enterprise can only be seen by something that could get authenticated through the enterprise and ensure data integrity, if you will. You're seeing that change, and you're seeing enterprises adopt those. And I think it obviously starts kind of with the forward-leaning enterprises, but even what I would call some of the laggard enterprises are starting to adopt the MDM functionality and next waves of technology that come around that.
The final question I have is, I started covering cybersecurity a couple years ago, and everyone I interviewed, or a lot of people, would kind of talk about how this mobile malware boom was coming and how it was going to be so terrible. But now it's 2 years later, and I guess it hasn't really happened. So I was just wondering maybe, at least in the U.S., it hasn't happened. So just kind of looking forward, I mean, do you think that that's something that's going to continue where we're not going to see, I guess, that stuff that everyone was predicting a couple years ago?
Yeah, just for context, I mean, I started working on, mobile malware solutions back in like 2002. And so I go way back into seeing people talk about the next year is going to be the year of mobile malware, and as soon as that happens, boom. And so I've certainly recognized and seen that phenomenon myself. I will tell you that as long as these app stores are highly curated and your phones are locked and you only get apps to these app stores, I really don't think that financial-based malware is ever going to be really successful just because you're just never going to solve that distribution problem. Now, that said, right, there it is possible still to build an app and have it get a couple people to download and run it, before Apple, Google catch up to it. And so if the motive of the attackers is other than financial, so maybe it's a nation state, maybe it's some other type of targeted attack, I think those are attacks that are more than likely to be, you can make those successful. But once again, the motive there's not financial, and from a broad perspective, unless you're somebody that would be targeted, because you're a celebrity or a high government official, you're safe. Nobody's going to target you and go through the effort just to get you to download this one app and so forth. So I would want to go down and say I think it's a year or two away. I think as long as the dynamics are in the market today, I think are going to prevent that. And it's just the different types of risks and issues that we're going to need to solve.
All right. Well, thanks for taking the time, Brian. Appreciate it.
No problem. I enjoyed it as always.
Thanks for listening to this week's Cybercrime and Business Podcast. As always, you can follow us on iTunes, YouTube, or wherever else you listen. And for more information, check out SurfWatchLabs.com.